Hi, everybody, and thank you, Jamie, very much for that introduction. As Jamie says, this whole journey has been one of collaboration, and without Jamie, we wouldn't be here. All of us at Ocean Aero owe him a debt of gratitude, as well as MDA, Board of Gulfport, and many other organizations that brought us all here a few years ago from Southern California. Also, thank you, Tony, Janet, and Amber for putting on this whole show today. I know building something like this is not an easy thing. So all of us in the room, I'm sure, are very appreciative of you putting through all that effort in the first place. I labeled today's talk Rising Tide of Mississippi and how that affected Ocean Aero. I really believe that the story of our company is one of a little bitty startup that was in San Diego that then moved here, was galvanized by the Mississippi's culture, was forged by the Gulf Coast's ecosystem of government and academia and proximity to industry, and all bolstered by a great workforce that we would not have been successful without. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that all the success that we have enjoyed so far today would not have been possible anywhere else but here. And it does take a village to do that. And as Jamie said, that teamwork and collaboration. And later on, I'll show you each little piece that came together, any one of which that if we had missed, we would not have made it. So a little bit about the product. As you have seen on the video, we design, build, manufacture, operate the world's only autonomous system that operates both on the surface of the ocean, and then it literally transforms, like a 1980s transformer, into a submarine and dives beneath the ocean's waves. So we can now reach 100 meters below the surface, or about a length of a football field, and that is sufficient to do most of the applications that we have around the world, the segments that we serve. You can kind of see some of the high-level stats on the Triton. It is entirely solar powered. It is powered by the wind. It is able to persist out by itself as a truly autonomous system. You will never take human beings out of the loop when you are doing something like this and at this scale, but to be able to multiply our ability to act in the ocean when you're far from home, when you're in hazardous conditions, do that less expensively than you ordinarily would be able to do that is the name of the game in the future, and I'll take you through a few applications of that here in a few minutes. Its ability to think on its own and to take environmental factors into consideration, to not hit things and to avoid being captured. We call that obstacle avoidance and threat evasion. You can think of this as a sensing platform out in the ocean that can take care of itself even when it's out of touch with human beings for a long duration period of time. Ultimately, the device is nothing but a truck for the ocean. Okay, so just think about putting any radio you want in your car, any tires on your car, same type of concept. Any type of payload that you want to build, you can integrate and establish onto the Triton far from home so that you don't have to send people to go do that. But we don't stop just at the hardware piece of this. I think a lot of the autonomous systems that you see in the news every day, whether they're in the sky or the little robot dog that I'm sure you've all seen on CNN, all of them, ground, air, water, all of them are going to be moving into more of a software-driven space into the very few short years to come. So call it what you want, artificial intelligence, machine learning, intelligent software adaptation, autonomous adaptation, whatever word you like out there in the marketplace. The idea is going to be taking massive amounts of data, terabytes of data collected every hour, and synthesizing that into information that we can use without all the noise. But then it won't stop there. You'll take that information that you gather and figure out how to use that as intelligence. What decisions would you make with all that data? Do you have to make it, or could you program something to be able to do that for you? Now, I know a lot of this sounds very Terminator-ish, okay? Machines thinking for themselves. But really, the safeguards around that, I think, are pretty well established today. I think that it may sound advanced, but no more advanced than many of the video games that a lot of our kids play these days. And the ability to harness that is going to be necessary to keep pace with the growing threats around the world that we face every day. Not just from geopolitical adversaries, but from sheer amount of climate change and monitoring and recording of all the different metrics we need to manage our ecosystems, manage our offshore oil platforms, manage our overall military strength and defensive postures of our country and allies. All of that information coming together at once is going to have to be developed. And so at Ocean Aero, while we have a great number of hardware engineers, system engineers, electrical engineers, the future is undoubtedly going to look like a higher degree of software engineering. And one of the things I'm very thrilled to see around the state of Mississippi at all the major universities is a ramp up in that type of machine learning and software adaptation into our workforce. And I'm thrilled with the teams that I met with today, and thank you for taking me through all of your robots that you built. I got to tell you, they built them a lot faster than we built our tractors out there. So good job. Keep going. We can't wait to hire you in a few years when you're done with school. We serve three major segments: science, offshore energy, and defense. I'm just going to take you through a few applications in each of these spaces to give you a flavor of the types of payloads that we have developed. All of these are using what we call commercial off-the-shelf technologies from around the world, almost entirely designed and manufactured here in the United States, though inputs happen from our allies, specifically in NATO. But just to give you a sense of how that works today, this is kind of the crux of what we call the science monitoring, reporting, and verification conundrum. And I think Sadie from Elemental Capital, wherever she is, was speaking about this on the panel earlier on. The notion of carbon sequestration is pretty important. As we all know, the Earth is heating up. There are climatological effects because of that we can't even begin to comprehend right now. But what we do know is that somewhere between 25 and 30% of human-created carbon is absorbed by the ocean every year. The idea then is, how do we make that even bigger? And so carbon sequestration projects are funded by these giant companies and some nations out there in the world to take carbon out of our environment, specifically the atmosphere, and literally sink it to the bottom of the ocean where it will stay for thousands of years. That will then generate an offset tax credit or a carbon credit. The problem is to verify that you actually sequestered carbon is hard. It's hard, it's expensive, and now you're spending more fuel verifying than you were sequestering in the first place. So it's widely believed that the MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification of carbon sequestration, is going to be required to unlock what we will call a multi-billion-dollar industry on a quarterly basis around this type of carbon offset credit capability. Likewise, we have payloads that can also help with what we call eDNA collection or water sampling collection for a great number of applications. This is pretty cool. Think of the Triton as a giant truck. Like I said, we got a bunch of pumps. It goes out by itself. It sucks up water into little plastic bags. It moves around to multiple points in the ocean, spends a few weeks doing that, hundreds of miles offshore, comes back and it gives the scientists these little bags. And inside those bags, there are little trace elements of DNA that when you analyze, you can figure out the disposition, the size, the migration patterns, the density of the population of every living organism within a patch of X miles. Now, I'm not an expert on that, but I will say that if I have a lot of scientists who don't have boats and insurance and food and time to go out there, it costs a lot of money to do this. Having a robot bring that back to you and having you assess that helps us understand the vitality of the oceans and understand the hydrocarbon impact of any potential oil spills or leaks. And if you can do that pervasively, you'll have a history of information over time that will help you assess the overall environment. And then you move into oil and gas and offshore energy types of applications. This is a pipeline in the Gulf of Mexico. On the left-hand side, what you're seeing is a bathymetry unit, or a bathymetry is just the name of when you scan the bottom of the ocean floor. Okay, and so when you look at the same piece of technology at the surface of the ocean, on the left-hand side is what it looks like. That same technology, once it dives, you're now 5 meters off the surface at the bottom, returns an image like that. Color is basically the amount of depth that you were able to see. And so on its first pass, a Triton can find large swaths of material in space, find the pipeline, and then dive down further to get a very close look at that. We take that data and we translate that to a 3D image. Now what you're seeing here is not just a computer fuzzy, bumpy coloration here. Those little lattice work grids on the top are protective mats over undersea cables and pipelines. The idea is to protect it from anchor strikes and anything else that's silt and sand and movement and any fissures that may come on top of that. If you zoom in on that little piece of that, you'll notice part of that is missing. We don't know why it's missing. All that we know is there is raw, exposed pipe at the bottom of the ocean that is susceptible to damage. And as opposed to having an ecological disaster, maybe we send somebody back with a little mat and put it back on top of that. So the type of evaluation on this type of pipeline is done today by human beings. Just to give you a sense of scale, between 0 and I think it's 50 miles offshore, it takes about $30,000 a day for a ship to go out and scan. Once you get past that benchmark of distance, it becomes $100,000 a day. Again, depreciation on your asset, it's insurance, it's food costs, it's human being labor cost, versus something that is roughly 1/20th the price using autonomous systems. So this type of information is not done that frequently. It's done maybe once a year. In some of the bigger pipelines, maybe it's done twice a year. But for the same price, we could return that something 25 times as frequent of the data scan. And wouldn't that be nice? Many of you would have seen yesterday in the news that in the Baltic Sea, there was a sabotage of 2 Finnish and German pipelines that disrupted data, communications, electricity, and oil and gas. That was a human state actor, and it was probably done by a planted explosive of some type. If only we could have found that, a planted explosive a little bit earlier, that might have changed at least some of the outcome. And the problem is there are pipelines everywhere. 100% of Asia's telecom, all of the internet of that entire side of the planet, runs through a little bitty strait off the side of Singapore. That's about as big as this room, okay? So the amount of safeguard you have on that today is actually very little. It's all done from the surface. What could you do if you had an autonomous system monitoring this going forward? This is another shot of one of our Tritons off the coast of one of the, it's a derelict actually, an oil and gas platform. It has a lot of applications, not just in monitoring hydrocarbons, but also in detection of pre and post-storm monitoring. Unfortunately, we live in a state affected by hurricanes. And when you are affected by a hurricane, there are protocols before you can go back to work. And monitoring that type of environment is pretty important before you put human beings back on those rigs. And then we get into some of the military applications. And I won't go too deep on all this so that you can sleep well at night. But I will say that the applications in the military space are vast. If you haven't noticed, it's a dangerous world. Okay, we've got the Black Sea, the Red Sea, the South China Sea, all the seas. There are nation states, there are terrorist organizations, there are political organizations that have an intent to do harm to the United States and our allies. And by protecting our oceans, it is one step away from making sure that they stay where they need to be and we're okay over here where we need to be. Many of you, I'm sure, are tracking the news in Russia and Ukraine and the juxtaposition of China. I think most of the United States Department of Defense is mostly concerned with the rising China, and for a good reason. The amount of sheer volume of material being put into the ocean is the largest in history. In the past 5 or 6 years, the PLA, it's the Chinese Navy, the People's Liberation Army, now has the largest navy on the planet. And you could argue our ships are better and we're better dispositioned, our people are better trained, and that may be true. But at some point, when you are fighting a war in an ocean, when you have 10 times the ships, that kind of matters. And so the question is, can our manufacturing base, can our cost basis keep pace with the China that is intent on that expansion? And then the question would be, even if you could, are there smarter ways of doing that? Let me just give you an example of what rising China looks right now. This is China's military disposition in 1999. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see little red symbols. The red planes represent latest generation fighter and bomber craft. The little ships represent 2 multi-combat ships, destroyers and things like that nature. At around this time, the PLA decided it was going to beat the United States. It was going to have the biggest navy. It was going to control and push back on American kind of policy in the space. And they have been on a tear for the past 25 years to do so with a deliberate aim. Now, 25 years later, this is what it looks like. Unless the United States is willing and able, both, to field that much material this quickly, the only way to counter that is through autonomous systems. Small, smart, very inexpensive, capable of outmaneuvering, hiding from, with the same type of lethality that you could go against a modern day craft as you could today with our modern day craft. Said another way, it's faster and cheaper to do it with autonomous systems. Now, again, I don't think it's one or the other. Okay, I'm not advocating for the reversal of American policy on our ships. Goodness knows we need Pascagoula to pump out as many of these things as possible. Okay, but I do think supplementing that is tantamount to success, and to not do so would be foolish against a rise of this magnitude. It's not just their Navy, by the way. Their Coast Guard is immense. You've probably seen on the news in the past few months, the guys with hatchets and daggers, and they're boarding the ships from Indonesia and the Philippines, and they're, if you don't know, they essentially ram other vessels. Okay, so the Chinese Coast Guard will ram other fishing vessels to get them out of the way. So, no, this is our patch of ocean, you can't be here. And in that type of contest, where ships are jostling, size matters. And so I thought it would be interesting just to elucidate this point to show you the difference. In the middle of the screen now, you're seeing an Arleigh Burke-class American destroyer. On the bottom, it's a Legend-class National Coast Guard cutter. Okay? The United States has, I think it's around 70 of the ones in the middle, and only 10 of the Coast Guards on the bottom. And this is what a Chinese Coast Guard platform looks like. Notice the size and the caliber of the main gun. Notice the overall displacement of the tonnage versus our Coast Guard is nearly 3 times as large. This is the type of material being fielded that is not technically Chinese Navy, it is Chinese Coast Guard. And so again, I could build you 1,000 Tritons for the cost of one of those. I could build them faster than we could build one of those. There's probably room for a mix. And that's why Ocean Aero was established. That's why we're here in Mississippi, because I think a lot of people believe that. A lot of our political representation in Washington, D.C. believes that. And I hang out with a lot of people all day long up in Washington, D.C. in that big 5-sided building that think about this and only this. And so it's top of mind. The next slide is just a video. I'll show you just a few snippets of what are some of our payloads that we have developed. You'll see some missions where we're deployed by helicopter. You'll see some missions where we're launching aerial assets from our Triton that can carry exactly what you think they carry. You can see some of the other types of payloads that find mines in the water, that listen for submarines, things of that nature. So just take a look at this. So at the risk of boring you, I won't go into each of those types of payloads, but you kind of get the gist of what we're trying to go out there and do. These are some of the locations in just the past few months where we have been on location in Kazakhstan, flown in by C-130s to work on their landlocked little piece of water out there that faces Russia. There's obviously paranoia there. Key West, Florida is an intel exercise in Camp Atterbury, Indiana, where we were capable of talking with high-altitude balloons, transmitting that 40 kilometers away from satellite to surface of the Earth, which is a whole different level of capability. So everywhere that we turn, we are getting proficient at building these types of payloads. Science, offshore energy, and defense that allow us to field quite a number of Tritons around the world. So these stars represent everywhere we are today. In the green, and then the blue is where we're about to be. In fact, some of the blue have already turned green since the time I made this slide. So I will point out as a point of pride that when we moved to Mississippi 3 years ago, only 2 of these stars existed. Okay, so we're very happy with the support that we have been able to receive here in Mississippi against that whole backdrop of technology, something that I think is critically important to our nation, something that I think will help bolster our Mississippi economy for a very long time to come. So that's Ocean Aero. Okay, so now we'll transition just to a little bit of how we got here and what we're doing here and why we decided to move. I love this slide because it really shows progress. When you think about education in Mississippi, we're kind of on a tear. You would have heard Lieutenant Governor Hoseman this morning talking about education and its change over the past 10 years. Many people don't realize that it's now 35th versus 50, or as he said, 51st from 10 years ago, and there's a lot of other things to be excited about. Admissions and enrollment at Ole Miss and Mississippi State are at all-time highs in 2024. It's slightly behind at USM, but right there at all-time high records as well. From the NAEP scores around the country, the 4th and 8th grade is now higher than the American average for the first time in recorded metrics, so that's pretty good. And I'm very encouraged to see that there is a continued investment over a 10-year period, a $3 billion investment through K through 12. And I think that deal of education feeding industry cannot be underwhelmed. You know, we're a company. We're here for one thing, and we can't do that without people, without smart people. And so everything that you're doing in STEM is extremely important to help us move that type of ecosystem forward. The next bullet here, that you guys might hate, right, because your housing prices are going up. It isn't just you, it actually is true. Housing prices are increasing, apartment rents are increasing, slightly behind. Ordinarily, that'd be bad news. But when you marry that with the second bullet, that's really great news. When you can have both supply and demand escalating at the same time, that is a robust economy. That is what you want to go see. That is what attracts business. Nobody wants to move into a place that is destitute and going down in education, going down in real estate values, because there is no marketplace to be had there. And then finally, on the right-hand side, population was decreasing here for a very long time. For the first time this last year, that broke even, slightly up, that's a good thing. And unemployment is better than the national average. This stat is from last third quarter 2023, 3.3% versus 3.8% of the United States average. It's currently 2.9% as of September of 2024, much better than the national average. And it may interest you to know that for the past 2 decades, the average unemployment rate for Mississippi has been roughly 7.4%. And so today, Mississippi, from a housing, valuation, a supply, an education, and an unemployment rate is better, literally now, than it has ever been. I should probably do a commercial for the government. But, you know, from a business standpoint, you look at this and you go, that's pretty good. And then you start looking at all the other pieces that make us really happy, which is on this page. As Jamie said, it is a collaboration, and I mean really collaboration. This is just not, lip service here. It took every circle on this page to make us successful, or at least moderately successful. To be clear, we are still a startup company fighting for our lives. We may be slightly larger now than we were 3 years ago, but all the co-builders over there in the corner, I am with you, okay? I have the same stress as you got. We just had a pretty good lucky streak here for the past 3 years. But without these circles, it wouldn't have happened. So everybody over there, make sure you take notes on this page, okay? There is a defense ecosystem here. There is an academic organization triad here that can really help your overall group. There is government agencies willing to help. I'm sitting at a table here with NDA. They're on the next slide. But these types of resources are not just here to talk. What I would say is happening in a lot of places in this world, okay? A lot of places. And I would say the say-do ratio of this state is exceptionally high. And it goes all the way from congressional support, as well as the actual base of people. So I told this story earlier on today to some group of people. It said, we posted a role in Southern California. We get about 10 respondents in about a week, okay? We post a role now in Gulfport, Mississippi. We have roughly 200 respondents in the first 24 hours. And it doesn't really matter which segment we are posting. Engineering, production, administration functions. There is just a workforce here who is willing to go to work. And some of you who may have lived in other parts of the country, I will jadedly say that's not always the case, okay? Not everybody wants to go to work. And as fervently, I think, as this culture does. And that is obviously very attractive to a group like ours. We give back, okay? We pay between 10 and 30% more than the average wages in each of the categories that we employ, not just against Mississippi, but against Gulfport as well. And so we are trying to recruit the best, and we're trying to pay the best. And it is a two-way street, and we firmly believe that by investing that type of energy into the community, we will reap the reward for that. I mentioned MDA, we wouldn't be here without them. I can't emphasize enough, if you are going to move a company, it does take an entire tribe of people to do this. We didn't even know how to lease a building. You don't just call a realtor and find a building to move into. You got to call these guys. And they will help you access where the real estate is, the different incentives that the state will offer. They will help you try to figure out even permission to get there in the first place. So we're on the port of Gulfport. Turns out our credit rating is like 1/1,000,000th the size necessary to be on that port of Gulfport, okay? We literally were not allowed to move in there. until the MDA helped. The governor made an exception. We were very pleased with it. We're very grateful for that. It's a perfect location for us. But this is the type of stuff that I don't think California's working on right now. And this is the type of stuff that Mississippi does so very well. We got to keep that party going. I mentioned the Port of Gulfport. Always nice to mention your landlords, and then the University of Southern Mississippi, who are just a fantastic broker. If you haven't been down to the Gulf lately, when you come, you should time it with a Gulf Blue kind of happy hour and get together. We'll take good care of you. Let us know you're coming. And University of Southern Mississippi spearheads that effort, and a tremendous group of people who do. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention our congressional delegations. So if you have not met them, you absolutely should. Book time, they'd love to see you. We spend a great deal of time with all of them. The two on the left are obviously Senator Roger Wicker, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, and three on the right are Congressman Kelly, Ezell, and Guest. Luckily, 3 out of the 5 of them were up for election, and they all got reelected, so that's good. Many people don't realize, though, just how influential Mississippi is in terms of the American Department of Defense budget. So Senator Wicker, as of, 3 weeks ago, is now the chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Just be impressed that he is, because it's a very good achievement. It's very good for Mississippi. The rest are on different appropriations committees. Senator Hyde-Smith is on Commerce, and she's also very influential in several other appropriations budgets. And then the 3 on the right-hand side are across a group spectrum of what I would say a coalition. Being strong is better than individuals. Congressman Kelly is chairman of Sea Power, which is obviously very helpful. And these group of 5 have come together more than once to co-author what I would call policy and influence and letters, both in the building and the Hill, to directly benefit Ocean Aero. And now look, they can't do that for everybody, and they're not kings and queens either. America has none of that. But when you have a state rally together for an interest of national security, especially when it's in Mississippi, this team of people goes to work, and they do it very well. So I don't know if anyone is here today from their offices, but we do appreciate your partnership. And obviously, we're very close to them on many bases. So again, if you're an entrepreneur in this space, if you're a founder, if you're a startup leader, and you don't know them, get to know them. They'd love to have you. They'd love to see you. And I can speak for them, and I know that they would be very supportive back. And then I thought I would just give you a little bit of detail around exactly what is so good about having their championship. So this is mostly for all my startup brethren out there, but also if you're a financier out in the crowd, you can also learn from this. This is not, again, just lip service. When this coalition comes together, when the collaboration in Mississippi comes together, every line of these 11 bullet points is direct adjustment to an income statement or a balance sheet. Okay, this is not, oh, we're so happy you're here, thank you for having us, have a nice glass of tea. This is a material change to our income statement and balance sheet for each of these types. Now, it could be tax credits, it may be workforce training, aid, it may be, a rent facilitation, it may be advocacy in Washington, D.C., it may be authoring some sort of either legislation or some sort of other piece of policy that may help. But whatever it is, there is a line I can draw to the direct materiality of Ocean Aero's past 3-year streak of success. So I just thought I'd put that up there in front of you. I showed a venture capital group this in DC the other day. They all took their phones out and took pictures of it because I think it's very informative around what you should be asking for, at least having the conversation with. And I won't speak for MDA or the senator groups or anybody else here, but I do know that having the conversation is better than not having the conversation. You need it, you want it to survive, okay, builders? And the state wants it to attract and keep the snowball effect going. The more successful stories we have, the more we will attract. And as Lieutenant Governor Hoseman said this morning, taxes going down, and what we do have left, we should use wisely, and I think it's very wisely spent here. And this is the result. This is our facility. If you haven't come by to see us yet, please come on by. Just let us know you're coming. We'll take you on a tour, roll off the red carpet. This was opened about 13 months ago. Had a pretty big party. This is a computer rendering, but it looks even better than that in real life. 63,000 square feet. We can build 10 of these Tritons a month. We're currently only building 1.5 or 2 a month right now. But we got big plans, and hopefully instead of doing a piece of buy, build, buy, sell, we will be able to build fleets and inventories in the very near future that will help us expand that workforce to additional lines. I put this next slide in here just because it's funny, because on the left-hand side of the slide is where we sat for 2 years. Okay, it's a little tractor trailer And I think Keith Blystead, who's in the audience here, is the chief of staff. I think many of you know him already. He took this picture out the window as it was being wheeled away. And it was the day we opened the thing on the right-hand side. So minor upgrade, but we were thrilled that we now come to work in that thing versus that. Just the smells alone were pretty crazy. We had a big party, okay, and you'll recognize some more faces here. So the Lieutenant Governor was in attendance, the Governor was in attendance, both sitting senators. Unfortunately, the Speaker of the House vote was called the night before, so all three congressmen had to bow out at the last second. They still sent their teams, which we were very appreciative of. The Navy spoke. Even the Wall Street Journal came for 2 days. If you haven't seen that video, it's on our website right now. It's a good 8-minute synopsis of the importance of autonomous systems in our oceans, the relevance of that to our Department of Defense posture, and why it's so important that we be ready from the capacity building standpoint in the case of a potential conflict. Today, we have hosted 495 visitors to that building since the day we opened the doors. Just only mildly annoyed that we couldn't push 5 more to get an even 500. But 495, most of them are customers, and generating now the results, which I just love to see this page. It needs to be bigger bars, faster bars. But when you are experiencing 40 to 100% growth for 4 consecutive years, you're doing something right. And again, we don't take all the credit for that. It's without the pieces that we were lent here from Mississippi, this could not exist. So it doesn't matter if you're not a defense contractor, it doesn't matter if you're in a different space, a different ocean group. If you are an entrepreneur in this audience, if you are a startup, you need to figure out what it exactly is the state can help you with and then ask for it specifically. And when you do, the state will respond. I am absolutely confident of that. Today, in a combination of equity investment, debt investment, revenue reinvestment, Ocean Aero has pumped back $75 million into the local economy. We have 65 employees, 60 of which are from Mississippi, for Mississippi, working at our building every day. We are building hulls 47 and 48 of our Tritons. Again, if you haven't seen one, it's down there in the hallway. Stop by after those, we'll tell you all about it. Somebody, I think Willie, you asked to ride one. Not today, but later. Okay, come visit. We'll put you on a boat. Bring your swimming trunks. But we're in a happy spot because of all this great partnership here in the state. And then I think this is pretty nice. I just wanted to show you that. So all of us at the company have in our pockets these challenge coins, and I won't bore you with what a challenge coin is right now. But this is what it looks like. We have given out several thousand of these coins since we got to Mississippi. You'll notice on the bottom of our latest generation, Roman numerals for the date we opened the building and the latitude, longitude of Gulfport, Mississippi. So that all around the world, from the Middle East to Africa to South America to Asia and Europe, and especially the United States, people have these coins in their desks and they're on their stands. There's little stands that people buy for these. And so there's a little bit of Mississippi everywhere else in the world. And I'll end this segment. There's only one more segment I'll ask you to bear with me on this video from Senator Wicker, because his team put this together at the building opening. I think a lot of the sentiments are really...
America's newest headquarters for manufacturer of autonomous ocean drones is now officially open for business in Gulfport.
And our Triton today represents the world's preeminent oceanographic autonomous vehicle. It affords our customers in the energy space, the oceanographic data space, of course our national security space, an unprecedented level of maritime domain awareness, stealth, and the capability that other countries can only dream of.
There's danger out there, and much of it lurks in the oceans. And we need to be equal to that, and the best way is Ronald Reagan's Peace Through Strength, and we're going to be part of that here at Ocean Aero.
This is going to be a demonstration, I think, to other people who are looking to locate the top quality, state-of-the-art jobs here in Mississippi.
We put the kit that's made here to work in a real-world environment in the Middle East, and that's what these unmanned systems do for us. It allows us to take decisive action when it matters the most.
To me, it's gratifying that we had something that started out in California, and basically they found the workforce here in Mississippi more conducive to getting the product done in a business-friendly way that serves our warfighter, protects our country and our allies, and does so in the best possible way we can for manufacturing and for national security.
So again, we're big fans of Senator Wicker and his wife Gail. They're welcome anytime. They have done their part for us. We're very appreciative. I'm cognizant of time, so I'm going to run through these last few slides very quickly. But this is mostly now to all the startup founders and entrepreneurs that are out here. I just thought I'd give you a few thoughts on just lessons learned at Ocean Aero as we have made our way into Mississippi. And I tried to be a little cheeky with this, but I think all of you will know what I mean. You know, the very first thing that you have to overcome when you start a company is that you have to realize that you have no idea what you're doing, okay? And if you think you do, you gotta really go back and soul search, okay? Because at the end of the day, whether it's technology or finance or legal or HR or operations, manufacturing, legislative, you name it, there are things out there that you really need to figure out. And so the solution to this problem is just to make a bunch of friends. And so I always tell the story that, you know, within the first, actually 60, 90 days of Keith and I taking over Ocean Aero, we built an advisory board of, I think it was 15 Admiral stars. We had a 4-star Admiral be on our board. We rebooted the board. We had a number of vendors that we extended invitations to. We signed up 18 different intermediary groups around the world that didn't work for Ocean Aero, but went to work for Ocean Aero. Now, we incentivized them through combinations of retainers and equity, but we made a lot of friends real quick. And part of that friendship was in Mississippi, and that was done before we ever moved here. So those of you who are already here have a leg up, go and use that leg up. The problem is once you make all these friends, they all want to tell you stuff. Okay, so the other problem is everybody's got opinions. We always say, you know, we got no shortage of advice given to us these days. You do have to listen to it all. Look, better to have inputs than not to have inputs. But you do have to figure out where to go with that. And the only advice I can give you there is just remember where true north really lies. You know, there are times at Ocean Aero where they have told me, hey, we just got to focus on one industry versus the other. Forget everything else. There's no money there. Or, hey, don't make it a submarine. Just be like everybody else and make a sailboat. It's much easier. It's much cheaper. There's a reason why we're the only ones in the world that can do this. Because it's really hard. And I would just say, just remember what it is you're in business for and stick with that. If you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you end up doing something that's pretty good. Which leads me to the next one. You know, if you're going to stick with what you're doing, you got to make money. Okay, this is not I remind the Navy all the time. Easy for you to say this. We got to go slow and really develop this because they get a check no matter what happens. Some of us have to make payroll every other Thursday. And to do that, I think it's a shame if you put your price level and your deal terms and your deal economics and your deal structures in a negative position. You will not make up negative margin with volume, okay? And so making sure that you figure that out, you know, Keith and I, we raised the price of this Triton by a factor of 3 the first day we were in the seat. You know what happened? Sales went up. Okay, there's a reason why you have people that are in tough spots today because they work on volume and not actually profitable businesses. So I would just advise this and other stories I can bore you with. Charge a good price. Okay, make a good deal. We're pending one big deal right now. If it wasn't for me and my crazy deal economics, we probably already have it right now from an Asian country and part of the world. It's a meaningful deal for us. It is material. I literally shut my laptop and walked out the other day and I said, I'm done here. I'm going back to Mississippi where I belong. Call me if you need me. And they said, okay, come back. You got to do that type of stuff. Stick to your guns. Charge a fair price. Don't gouge people. Charge a fair price. And then finally, you know, just remember, free advice is worth what you pay for. A few last lessons learned here from just in career. I was at GE for nearly 20 years. You learn a few things. This acronym I learned from a kind of father figure mentor of mine, and it stands for, you can't do business sitting on your whatever the A stands for. And it's just the notion of you got to get out there. You got to come to events like this. You got to follow up on events like this. You got to go to where your customers are. Like I love Zoom and Teams as much as the next guy. Go shake some hands. Things magically happen when you're out there. If your slate isn't booked, go anyway. Book it when you get there. Focus on it. Get out there and execute. Lincoln and Patton, I love these guys. Both were right in my opinion. The guy on the left is quoted by saying, you know, you give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening my axe. The guy on the right-hand side said, hey, an okay plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan executed next week. Wisdom is knowing which man is right, okay? One is not right all the time. And I'd say biding your time and tactical patience is important. Executing faster than everyone else is also important. And then finally, I'd say, work smarter, not harder, but also harder. This is a summary page. We can send this out to you if you want. And then, look, above all else, I would say, remember 30 Rock, okay? 30 Rock, if you've seen the show, ironically, I've never seen the show 30 Rock, but it was based on a man named Mike Pilot, who came from GE Appliances. When GE bought NBC Universal, he took the advertising leadership role, SVP of sales. for NBC. Corner office, 30 Rock. Alec Baldwin's character is based on him. I got to know him pretty well. He's a good mentor of mine. And there came a day where I had a real tough time. I lost a deal. The team was in fury. The boss was pissed off at me. Excuse my language. It was dark. It was a dark time for me. And he kind of brought me aside and he said, all right, listen, kid, here's the deal. Every morning when you get up in the car of life, you need to reach up and just rip off the rear view mirror. And because it doesn't matter how tough your day was yesterday. Because your team is relying on you to set a vision, put on a smile, and get out there and lead something. And the only direction you are concerned with is forward. And so today, I end all of my emails to the company with forward. It is emblazoned on our wall at Ocean Aero. When you come visit, you'll see it there in our main space, so that every employee can always look up when times are tough and see the word forward. And where forward leads you, you don't really know, but Jim, I tell you, I'm working on being one of those IPO and exits you were talking about, so I'm on it, okay? We're working on it. But I do think it is important to remember that, especially if you're gonna be in the startup space. It's learn from your past, but always move forward. So thank you for having me here. Sorry I went over time. Tony, thanks for everything. Janet, Amber, thanks for having us here today. Thanks very much, everybody.